He sees something in the lives, but notice he's not even talking about what he sees. Yes, indeed, there is an evidence here. He knows the church. Whoever this is, whoever the writer of Hebrews is, he knows these people. And he loves these people as he's a pastor to these people. And he's interested in their souls. He cares about them. And remember, his point wasn't to trip them up as they held to Christ, but to increase their grip on the confidence sent before them. And he wants them to be encouraged. He wants them to be comforted. He wants them to take heart in what is occurring, what is laid out before them. And he says, God is not unjust so as to overlook your work and the love that you have shown for his name. Now again, skipping over the first part just for a minute. When we look at those phrases, your work and the love that you have shown for his name, what is he talking about work? Was it work to get the love to his name? No, the text does not say that. You swell with something for the name of God, meaning what? The very presence, person, attributes of God, all that God has shown that he is, all that God has revealed that he is, the very fact that he's God, you work for him. I want to serve the saints. I want to continue to serve the saints. Notice at the end of the phrase, at the end of the sentence, as you still do. I want to go on and serve the saints. But I do this not because of the saints even. I do this not because I even like the saints. That's certainly a part of it, but that's not the point. It's because of the love we have for his name. Remember verse 7. Remember whose glory, all that we produced, lifted up, exalted. Whose glory was it? It was God's glory. And we find here there is something of God's glory that pushes us forward. There is something of God's glory, and it is God's glory that drives us as a church. If we are to be a church, if we are to do the one anothering that we must do, if we are to be a church that is in fellowship with one another, and we'll look at that further here in a few minutes. If we are to be a church that serves one another. The word serve, by the way, is a very revealing word. Serve one another. And not to the benefit of ourselves, but to the benefit of others. Who is it that taught us to do that? It was Jesus Christ, the head of the church, the Lord of the church. But there's something that we need to see, something that the author wanted us to see first. When he talks about our sincerity, the sincerity is not just the action. It can be followed up by action, but that's not even his argument now. There is a marked sincerity here. Well, what does sincerity mean? It means the honest, it means the genuine. But who marks the sincerity? Who marks the sincerity of his church? Who marks the sincerity of our hearts? Notice he doesn't say that it's his job. No pastor can know the hearts of his people. He really can. We can't even know our own hearts sometimes. Who marks the sincerity of our hearts? For God. Notice how the verse begins. For God is not unjust so as to overlook. It sounds a little clunky, doesn't it? For God is not unjust. What does that mean? How does that work? What is the author trying to express here? Well, what we find here is what is considered in the original language an emphatic double negative. Now, you'll remember your third grade, fourth grade grammar classes. If you were anything like me, a nun would hit you on the knuckles when you used a double negative. That didn't work, right? The ruler worked on the knuckles, but the double negative didn't work, right? You're not allowed to do that. But in the original language, there is something of emphasis being brought out here. You need to know, in no uncertain terms, that it is absolutely certain that God does see, that God does know the sincerity of our faith. You see, what he does is he places the comfort we can draw from growing on in the faith, the comfort we can draw to know that we are a people not only who are called to, but can mature in the faith. He places it upon the very witnessed, steadfast faithfulness of God. Now let's take that apart for a moment. The word there, to overlook, could also mean to forget. It also could mean to be out of sight. There's a visual function to this word. And that's why this translation says overlooked. Others say forget, but meaning we forget often things that are not in our line of sight. Meaning if God will absolutely not overlook us, he's not looking past us, he's not looking in a distance while we're in front of. If he's not looking anywhere but us, then where is he looking? He is looking right at us. In a sense, that might almost draw us back in fear. Do you know he sees us? And perhaps if we look at our lives and we look at even our thoughts, those things that we harbor in our hearts, we might say, I don't want God to look at me there.